Hi there, welcome to Olivier's Backcountry Tips. Today we're going to look at sewing and needlework 101. We're going to look at what you take in the backcountry sewing repair kit. We're also going to look at how to thread a needle, how to finish a stitch line, and we're going to look at two common stitching repairs. We're going to look at common rips as well as how to put on a patch in the backcountry. Okay, let's look at my sewing repair kit. So this is what I carry when I need to do any kind of repairs in the field. This is what I use. So as you can see, it's super small, super light, fits in this little micro Ziploc bag. Inside, you'll find I've got two needles of different gauges. So I got a small needle here, that's for thinner fabrics, a lot of clothing, that kind of stuff. And I got a thicker needle here. This is for like those big thick nylon straps on a backpack, tarp patches, things, that thicker fabric that needs a bit of the thicker needle. Around my little needle holder, I've got brown fabric thread. It's really thin, really small, and this is great for those really thin repairs that you have to do. And over here, I've got a thicker thread, and this is good for those thicker, more important weight-bearing repairs. You can use a waxed nylon, that works really well. In this case, I'm using something called synthetic sinew, which has got like a 80-pound breaking strength. Really strong, really handy. All right, so now let's thread our needle. So I've got my thread here for my little repair, and I've got my needle. The first thing you'll do is you'll take that end of that thread and run it through the eye of the needle. It can be a bit of a time-consuming process, so just be patient until you get it. And then we have to knot the thread. So what we'll do is we'll take both ends, we'll bring them together, and then once we have both ends, we're going to make a bit of a loop, like so, and then we'll bring our ends into that loop. And then once that's through, we'll do that one more time. And then we'll pull it tight. Once it's pulled tight, we can pull on both ends. And great, now we've got our knot. So now we want to clean this up. So I'll take my scissors and I'll just cut it close to the knot. And what I like to do is, this is an optional step, you don't have to do this, but I do like to take a lighter and I just burn the ends, and it helps prevent fraying. So I'll just melt those ends just a little bit. That's perfect, and that'll keep it from fraying. And now we're ready to sew. Okay, so let's look at our first repair example here. I'm going to pull out my favorite short shorts. And so what we got here is we have this L-shaped rip. This is a super common rip that happens, especially with kind of soft shell, technical, lightweight clothings. It gets a little branch will poke through, and the way that the fabric is set up, it will tear in this bit of an L shape here. So the way we're going to fix this is really simple. So we're going to take our needle and thread that we just set up in the last shot. We're going to take our needle. We're going to go underneath inside the pants, and we're going to poke the needle right at the base of that rip, and then pull it through. Once we're done, we're going to take our needle, go across the rip, and you want to go close to the edge, but not right up on the edge. And then just poke the needle through, reach underneath, pull that thread, and come back up and poke right beside where you first poked at the start of the stitch, and then pull that thread. And you just repeat. So essentially we're just going back and forth over the rip, on either side of the rip, coming around and slowly closing it up. You want to make sure that you don't have to pull very tight, but you do want to take up all that, you want to take up any slack you might have in that thread. So when I'm done pushing the needle through, I grab my thread and I just pull it nice and tight and give it a nice couple yanks, making sure that everything's cinching up nicely. And we just keep going back and forth across that stitch there. And keep going back and forth. I'm going quite closely from my other stitch points. I don't want to have too much gap. It can be tempting to make the distances large so that this takes less time, but you'll get more strength and more longevity if you just take your time and make the stitch spacing nice and small. So I'm just finishing up my stitch now, and now we've done a quick repair and we've closed up our stitch, and now we need to finish and tie this off. And this can be a little tricky, so I'll try to do my best to show you how it's done, but we'll do one more stitch here to really close it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to poke it through the fabric. Once the needle is through the fabric, don't pull the thread. Leave it in a big loop, loose loop like that. Then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to poke it back through the fabric right beside my loop. Right beside my loop. And I'm going to bring that needle out. Now, this needle is going to go through the loop that we just made. And instead of pulling tight, I'm going to pull the thread. I'm not going to pull the needle, I'm going to pull the thread. And what that does is that's going to kind of pull this other loop down. Make sure that's nice and tight. And now we've got another loop here. So then we'll take my needle and go once through, whoops. We're going to go once through and twice through. Now I can take my needle and pull it nice and tight. And that's going to lock up that thread really nicely. Now that we're done, we can clean it up. Take your scissors, clean it up. And again, bonus points, bonus step if you want. You can take your lighter and just melt that end. And voila! You've got a really solid, quick repair that will fix up any rip in the field. Nice, nice and done. All right, let's look at another example. Okay, so we're going to look at another repair example here. This is going to be the dreaded hole. So often, an ember flies off of the campfire and burns into your fabric, or you get a big puncture or tear or hole. You can't really bring the edges together because you've lost fabric. And also, if we brought the edges together, it would just kind of pinch the overall fabric in a weird way. So in this case, we're going to want to put a patch on. So the way I'm going to do that is I bring another item in my repair kit, and that's called this Gear Aid fabric tape. It's really tough, really good tape that has a bit of a fabric feel, which is great for doing these kind of repairs. These are stick-on, but I find that especially with this kind of material on kind of clothing, it really doesn't stick and you need to sew it on. So this is what we're gonna do. So the first step is we'll take our fabric tape and we'll measure it out on our hole here, and we're just gonna cut it out. So once we have our patch, a really important thing, if you can do it, that will really add a lot of lifetime to the patch is rounding off the corners. This will help eliminate little bits of fabric that can catch and then start peeling off the patch. So I'm just going to really roughly round out all those corners. Awesome. So we'll check our length here. Perfect. Okay, so step one, I'm just gonna take my Gear Aid patch here. And here, if you had another type of fabric, you could use that as a patch as well. But this one, we're just gonna peel off the back and get it on. Okay, we got our patch over our hole, and we're going to take our trusty needle and thread again, and it's going to start the same way. So I'm going to go underneath the fabric and poke the needle kind of close to the edge. And this time it's going to be a little bit of a different technique. We're just going to be going under or over, under, over, under. So we'll start with over, move the needle over, pull, and then go next to your thread, poke that needle through. And a little bit different than the last stitch, we want to pull any slack out, but if we pull too tight, it kind of bunches the patch. So you want to keep that thread snug, but not too tight. And we're going to keep going around the patch. Okay, so we're finishing up our stitching here. As you can see, there's not too much bunching up with the patch. Our stitching, there's no loose threads or threads that are kind of sticking out, but it's not under too much tension either. Underneath, we're looking at the same thing as well, looking pretty good. So now we got to finish the stitch, and again, we're going to finish the stitch the exact same way we did it last time. So I'm going to poke a hole in the fabric and poke another one, but this time I'm not going to pull the thread through, just enough the needle. So we got that big long loop. Now I'll poke that needle really close. Oops. Oops, here we go. So we're going to poke that needle really close to the loop we just made. You want to take your time, make sure it's good. And bring that needle through the loop. Pull on the thread. Make it nice and tight. And then bring that needle twice through the loop. I'm going to pull that needle. That comes down nicely. And we got ourselves a nice repair. Clean it up. And burn the ends if you want. Perfect. So there you have it. How to put on a patch, how to repair a rip, and how to deal with some basic needlework. Hope you enjoy.